With SRN News, I'm Michael Harrington in Washington. President Trump and Kim Jong-un both arrived today in Singapore for their Tuesday summit. Hopes are high, but New Jersey Republican Senator Bob Menendez is taking a wait-and-see approach.
Getting a deal with North Korea is not the difficult part. In fact, 3 administrations, President Clinton, President Bush, and President Obama, have acquired some form of a deal, only ultimately to have them fail.
He spoke to ABC TV's This Week program. This will be the first summit of its kind between a leader of North Korea and a sitting U.S. president. Chinese President Xi Jinping extolling free trade and criticizing, quote, selfish, short-sighted policies today during a closely orchestrated gathering of a Beijing-led bloc. With tight security, closed roads, and restricted press access, the summit's choreographed show of unity, a striking contrast to the G7 summit that wrapped up yesterday and saw U.S. and its allies divided by escalating trade tensions. The White House kicking off a new advertising campaign aimed at warning young people to stay off opioids.
The public service campaign includes TV and social media ads that feature true stories of young people who went to extreme measures to feed their opioid addiction.
I thought I had it under control. I didn't know it'd be this addictive.
The ads are part of an effort to turn the tide against the deadly epidemic.
Opioid dependence can happen after just 5 days.
About 46,000 people died in drug overdoses involving opioids in the year ending last October. Greg Clugston, the White House.
Spain's Maritime Rescue Service says it's picked up 334 migrants, but also recovered 4 bodies from one of the boats it intercepted today trying to cross the Mediterranean Sea. The UN says nearly 600 migrants have died on that ocean so far this year. This is SRN News. It is hurricane season again, and Puerto Rico still hasn't recovered from the last one.
We meet people every day that will tell us, we still haven't had power since September, since October.
Daniel Stevens is with Samaritan's Purse, one of many Christian relief groups trying to help.
There's definitely some anxiety among the people here. There's still a lot of needs, and people don't really feel prepared and ready for the next storm season.
He says the people of Puerto Rico need financial aid and prayer that this season the big storms will stay away. An openly homosexual candidate for governor of Maryland is airing what homosexual activists say is the nation's first ever political ad showing a same-sex couple kissing. Democratic State Senator Richard Madaleno aired the ad this past week in the Washington area on the Fox News show Fox and Friends. It was also posted on his campaign website. This is SRN News. Legislation that would legalize hemp as an agricultural product being included in the Senate's Farm Bill.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says his hemp bill, called the Securing the Hemp Farming Act, will be included in this year's Farm Bill. Senator McConnell says the hemp legislation has been one of his top priorities and is very important to agriculture in his home state of Kentucky. The bill would legalize hemp by removing it from the federal list of controlled substances and allowing it to be sold as an agricultural commodity. In addition, it would allow states to regulate hemp, allow hemp researchers to apply for grants from the Agriculture Department, and make hemp farmers eligible for crop insurance. Linda Kenyon, Washington.
Today is Sunday, June the 10th, and it's a birthday for some famous people, including Britain's Prince Philip. He is 97 years old today. Media commentator Jeff Greenfield turned 75. Olympic gold medal figure skater Tara Lipinski, 36. This is SRN News.
Hey, it's Steve Harvey here for the Illinois Broadcasters Association, and in a recent survey, the Illinois Emergency Management Agency was asked to name the top 5 items that every Illinois family needs to have in their home's emergency disaster kit. Check out these answers. Water, can't live without it. Number 2, non-perishable food. Well, after all, a man gotta eat, right? Number 3, weather radio, and make sure you got fresh batteries too. Number 4, flashlight. Even more reason to have fresh batteries on hand. Number 5, First aid kit. Look, there's no reason to feud over what items to put in your family's emergency disaster kit. Get the answers and more at ready.illinois.gov. That's ready.illinois.gov.
Sponsored by the Illinois Emergency Management Agency, aired in cooperation with the Illinois Broadcasters Association and this station.
From Keene in the Shire, the Liberty Media capital of the world, this is Darrell W. Perry, host of FPP Radio News for Sunday, June 10th, 2018. Silver is trading at $16.78 per ounce. Gold is valued at $1,299 per ounce. Zencash is trading at $20, and the average price of Bitcoin is $7,214. Antiwar.com reports the White House has offered a letter to Congress detailing U.S. military presence around the world and in some cases offering legal justification for having troops there. Despite claiming the letter meant to show their commitment to keeping Congress informed, it also had some conspicuous absences. The three biggest U.S. wars, Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan, all managed to not include any troop levels in the letter. There is no specific reason given within the letter for not providing those numbers, which includes tens of thousands of troops. President Trump has at times claimed that troop levels in those countries are classified and that the enemy must never know how many U.S. troops are there. Even with the administration using this as a pretext for keeping troop levels from the American public, it's not clear how they can keep the troop levels from Congress. Most of the figures aren't surprising. One noteworthy thing is that it mentions U.S. troops in Saudi Arabia and Yemen who are involved in combating the Houthi insurgency in Yemen. This is important because the Pentagon told the Senate before a recent vote on Yemen that no U.S. troops were involved in the war in Yemen. For over 40 years, Roberts & Roberts Brokerage has been a trusted source for buying and selling precious metals. Gold, silver, platinum, and palladium. They don't feed the banks. They're Bitcoin preferred and have removed the minimum purchase amount for all orders paid in the digital currency. Call Roberts & Roberts Brokerage today for knowledgeable advice on buying and selling precious metals and a forward-thinking approach to new technologies. 800-874-9760 or visit online at rrbi.co. UPI reports Kia Motors Corporation plans to recall 500,000 cars in the United States this summer to fix an airbag flaw linked to a federal investigation into fatal crashes. The recall impacts 507,587 vehicles, including the 2010 to 2013 Kia Forte, Forte Coupe sedans, 2011 to 2013 Kia Optima sedans, and 2011-2012 Kia Optima hybrid sedans and Sedona minivans, according to a National Highway Traffic Safety Administration press release. The release states in the event of a crash, the airbag control unit may short-circuit, preventing the frontal airbags and seatbelt pretensioners from deploying. The airbag flaw is tied to a federal investigation into 4 fatalities and 6 injuries in Kia and its affiliate Hyundai concerning crashes where the airbag failed to deploy, according to a Wall Street Journal report. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration opened Office of Defects investigations into the airbag issue related to crashes in March. 4 of the crashes involved 2011 Hyundai Sonatas and 2 involved 2012 and 2013 Kia Fortes. Kia issued a statement back in March saying it remains focused on the safety of its customers and will work closely with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration on the ongoing investigation, including monitoring and conducting additional crash tests as appropriate. Kia said in the release that it is still working on a remedy, with the recall set to begin on July 27th. Hyundai recalled more than 580,000 Sonata cars in April, including the 2011 to 2013 Sonata sedans and 2011-2012 hybrid vehicles. Zencash is the world's first private, distributed, and reliable platform for communications, transactions, and publishing. Zencash has the ability to use both transparent and shielded transactions, with shielded transactions using zero-knowledge proofs. Zencash features global governance with inclusive decision-making, reliable funding for continuous improvements, and documentation and wallets in many languages that are available for Linux, Mac, Windows, and Android devices. Learn more at zencash.com. Reuters reports the largest American actors union and 4 major television networks on Saturday agreed to limit auditions in private hotel rooms and homes, ratifying a guideline the Screen Actors Guild had enacted on its own accord in response to the Me Too movement. The Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, SAG-AFTRA, which represents 160,000 actors and management from ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox, reached a tentative agreement on a 3-year contract that also includes an array of pay increases, according according to a guild statement. The networks and union agreed to language similar to that from the union's own guideline number 1 issued in April, which called for an end to auditions, interviews, and similar professional meetings in private hotel rooms or private residences. SAG-AFTRA President Gabriel Carteras said the goal was to eliminate the potential for predators to exploit performers behind closed doors under the guise of a professional meeting. This has been FPP Radio News. Online at fppradio.com.
Today we decided to walk to school. The light counted. 15, 14,
41, 31, 13. We
took a left on Carroll Street. Danny's smart, but he gets distracted.
I
realized he forgot his homework. I hope he doesn't have another bad day at school.
When you can see learning and attention issues from their side, you can be on their side. That's why there's Understood.org, a free resource for the parents of the 1 in 5 kids with learning and attention issues. Go from misunderstanding to Understood.org. Brought to you by Understood and the Ad Council.
From CBC News, The World This Hour, I'm Sintar Sirs. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is facing blistering attacks by American trade advisors today after he told the G7 summit in Quebec that Canada won't be pushed around by the United States on trade issues. Yesterday, U.S. President Donald Trump rescinded his support of the G7 communique and tweeted that Trudeau was dishonest and weak. White House trade advisor Peter Navarro following that up by telling Fox News Sunday today that Trudeau had stabbed Trump in the back.
There's a special place in hell for any foreign leader that engages in bad faith diplomacy with President Donald J. Trump and then tries to stab him in the back on the way out the door.
Canadian Foreign Minister Chrystia Freeland responded this way to the American criticism.
The most important thing is deeds rather than words, and the deed, the action, which Canada has objected to and will continue to object to very strongly, was the illegal and unjustified imposition of tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum. And Canada has objected in words, of course, but more importantly in actions, with a commitment to retaliate in a perfectly measured and reciprocal way.
And Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is winning support from his political rivals in his feud with the Trump administration, including incoming Ontario Premier Doug Ford. Ford, a populist campaigner who has praised Trump in the past, said that he stands shoulder to shoulder with Canada's Liberal Prime Minister because jobs in his province are at stake. Italy and Malta are in a maritime standoff over the rescue of migrants. After several hundred were taken to an Italian port on Saturday, Italy's Interior Minister refused to take a second boat of rescued people, insisting that Malta should take them. Megan Williams has the latest from Rome.
Italy's new far-right Interior Minister Matteo Salvini has made good on his often-stated promise that he would shut off Italian ports to migrants rescued in the Mediterranean Sea. Today, he insisted Malta take the 629 migrants on board the humanitarian Aquarius ship, claiming Italian harbors are closed. Most of the migrants on the Aquarius were pulled from the sea by the Italian Navy under instructions from Italy's Rescue Coordination Center here in Rome. The rescues took place in an area much closer to the Italian island of Lampedusa than Malta, and under international law should be taken to Italy, the closest safe harbor. The people are fleeing detention camps in Libya, where extortion and widespread torture are reported. Megan Williams, CBC News, Rome.
Fire crews in Baghdad are battling flames at a warehouse holding ballots from last month's parliamentary elections. As Rebecca Collard reports, the votes are about to be recounted.
On Wednesday, the Iraqi parliament approved a recount in the country's parliamentary election held last month. But today, the warehouse holding the election ballots caught fire near Baghdad. Crews worked to put out the blaze before it destroyed the contested ballots. The extent of the damage is unclear. So far, the cause of the fire is also unknown, but the circumstances are suspicious. The bloc, led by the controversial Shia cleric Muqtada Sadr, won the largest number of seats in the May vote. He is a critic of both Iranian and U.S. influence in the country, but several parties contested the election, claiming fraud and a number of polling stations and demanding a manual recount. Now, that recount is also likely to be contested. Rebecca Collard, CBC News, Beirut.
Parts of Alberta and Saskatchewan are facing some powerful storms. Alberta has had more than 15,000 lightning strikes since yesterday afternoon, and a tornado touched down near St. Paul, Alberta, northeast of Edmonton. Still a risk of severe thunderstorms and heavy rain today as well. And that is your world this hour. For CBC News, I'm Sitar Sirs.
They were outnumbered, out-equipped. They had no chance of winning, but they had one huge advantage: General George Washington.
The fate of unborn millions will now depend, under God, on the courage and conduct of this army. We have to resolve to conquer or die.
Just as the leadership of one man helped form a nation, today leadership can transform the world. Leadership is in you. Now pass it on from passiton.com.
Trump's pressure on North Korea loses its bite. Trump blows up the G7 on his way out the door.
Hollywood takes a step toward eliminating the casting couch. This is Reuters Now.
I'm Reuters' Grace Lee, just outside the St. Regis Hotel, where Chairman Kim Jong-un is likely winding down after a long first day here in Singapore. His arrival this afternoon was highly anticipated. There were people lining these streets just hoping to get a glimpse of the chairman. And it was actually a very interesting day in regards to the North Koreans. North Korean state media were here trying to catch the best angle of their chairman as he passed by. And of course, security, North Korean security guards were everywhere with their black suits and earpieces. And when tourists tried to take photos of Kim Jong-un, they would stop them and take their phones away and delete those photos. Later on, we tried to ask the North Koreans why they did this, and they simply replied, "Of course you can't take photos of the chairman, how dare you?" So that's giving us some insight as to how the North Koreans are going to behave while they're here. But as soon as Kim Jong-un got to the hotel, he had to turn right back around to attend his meeting with the Singaporean Prime Minister, where he thanked the Prime Minister for hosting the summit. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump touched down in Singapore late in the evening, kind of just arriving as Kim Jong-un called it a day. Of course, all this is building anticipation for that big meeting between Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un on Tuesday, the first ever summit between a sitting U.S. president and a North Korean leader.
Across Asia, there are signs Donald Trump's maximum pressure on sanctions against North Korea is fading. That may impact any deal over Kim Jong-un's nuclear weapons made this week in Singapore. In the Chinese border city of Dandong, locals tell Reuters some North Korean restaurants have reopened. Tour operators say more Chinese are visiting the north, and China's official airline Air China has restarted flights to Pyongyang. Trump has said he doesn't even want to say maximum pressure anymore now that relations are better. But experts say if there's no deal this week and he wants to go back to fire and fury, it may not be so easy anymore. There's Matt Spatalnik in Singapore explains why.
No matter what happens with this summit in Singapore, the genie is really out of the bottle on sanctions. North Korean officials have already visited China, looking at ways to increase their own economic development. There have also been efforts by the Russians to loosen the noose around North Korea's neck on sanctions. They were never a big fan of this to begin with. The South Koreans are talking about different joint development projects that could also make it very hard to return to any kind of severe limits on trade and commerce with Pyongyang.
There are stakes at home, too. Trump has insisted he wouldn't let up on max pressure unless North Korea agrees to concrete steps to get rid of its nuclear weapons.
If he comes out of this summit, as looks likely, with little more than promises to move in that direction on North Korea's part, he'll look very weak back at home. Certainly some lawmakers on the Democratic side will say that he has failed to deliver on really putting the screws to North Korea. His own base, in fact, which has applauded his strong-arm tactics against Pyongyang, could also see signs that he's taking a more weak-kneed approach.
U.S. lawmakers have voiced concern traders in China are already dodging sanctions. However, diplomats in Beijing told Reuters there's no evidence China's broken its UN pledges to sanction the North.
A
A federal judge has temporarily blocked the deportation of a pizza delivery man who was detained after delivering food to an army base in New York. 35-year-old Pablo Villavicencio, an undocumented immigrant from Ecuador, has been granted a temporary stay until July 20th.
No hate, no fear.
The married father of two will remain in ICE custody until his case goes to court.
Please, ICE, do the right thing with my husband. He's trying to stay here in the legal way. Please, don't stop him. Don't take him away from us.
His wife, who was a U.S. citizen, says Villavicencio currently has an open green card application. He was arrested on June 1st after delivering food to Fort Hamilton Army Base. A background check revealed he had an outstanding deportation warrant from 2010.
Just a hardworking family guy.
New York Senator Chuck Schumer, along with Governor Cuomo, say they will fight to keep the young father from being sent back to Ecuador. Meanwhile, dozens of restaurant owners say their drivers are now afraid to deliver food to the Army base.
After all the public feuding and Twitter sniping, the trade disputes and backdoor tensions, the countries of the G7 summit did in the end put out a joint communique on the need for free, fair, and mutually beneficial trade. But after watching Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's closing remarks not to endorse the communique because of, quote, Justin's false statements and calling him weak and dishonest. At issue, Trudeau defending his country's retaliatory tariffs on the U.S.
I have made it very clear to the president that it is not something we relish doing, but it is something that we absolutely will do because Canadians were polite, we're reasonable, but we also will not be pushed around.
Trump's bombshell tweet came after G7 nations appeared to have papered over the cracks in their alliance at the two-day summit in Quebec, where Trump defiantly brandished his America First agenda. The Prime Minister's spokesman tweeting that what Trudeau said wasn't anything he hadn't already said to Trump himself. Trump had set a very confrontational tone ahead of the summit by slapping tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from Canada and the EU and calling for Russia to be let back into the Group of Seven. He left the same way he came in, airing his grievances on trade.
Tariffs are going to come way down because people cannot continue to do that. We're like the piggy bank that everybody's robbing, and that ends.
This followed 2 days of feuding with some of his closest allies. One French official told reporters of a very unusual and bitter exchange Friday between world leaders, describing the U.S. president making his case in a rant. The office of the German chancellor put out this photo, which seemed to back up that narrative. Communique as agreed by all participants.
A stubborn wildfire in Colorado continues to grow, prompting new evacuations. And adults were evacuated Saturday as crews try to contain the wildfire near Durango.
Within 20 minutes, our life was turned upside down of you're okay to you're not okay and you need to leave now.
Elizabeth Layton is one of more than 1,300 homeowners who have been evacuated. Firefighters are bracing for conditions to get worse because of strong winds and hot, dry weather. So far, more than 9,000 acres have been scorched. Last year, a near-record 10 million acres were burned in U.S. wildfires, mostly in western states because of a deepening drought.
Climate
change risks destroying humanity. That was Pope Francis's stark warning to the world's top oil executives during a 2-day conference at the Vatican. He called on top oil executives from ExxonMobil, BP and the Norwegian firm Equinor to help the world convert to clean fuels to avoid catastrophe. He told the energy leaders and investors, quote, "The world needs a new energy mix that combats pollution, eliminates poverty and promotes social justice." It was a closed-door event, only open to cameras for a few of his words. Pope Francis has long backed scientific consensus that climate change is caused by human activity. In 2015, he wrote a major document on global warming and described it as worrying that the search for new fossil fuel reserves is still ongoing. Investors and world powers have called on the energy industry to play a bigger role in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and meet the goals set out in the 2015 climate agreement signed in Paris.
16 years of constant violence in Afghanistan, and now a glimmer of hope. The Taliban have called a 3-day ceasefire for the Eid holiday, a surprise announcement and the first of its kind from the militant Islamists. It comes after President Ashraf Ghani ordered his forces to stand down in a similar unconditional ceasefire that'll carry until June 20th. The question now is, can it hold? News travels slowly in the remote corners of Afghanistan, and less than 24 hours before the announcement, the Taliban attacked several government outposts, reportedly killing 17 soldiers. The militants also said that foreign troops would not be included in this new ceasefire, such as NATO forces. Meanwhile, the government's ceasefire doesn't extend to other militant groups, like Islamic State. This suicide bombing on Monday, claimed by Islamic State, killed 14 at a meeting of Muslim religious leaders, where the clerics declared a holy order against suicide bombings. President Ghani has proposed legitimizing the Taliban as a political entity and releasing prisoners in an effort to bring them closer to ending the conflict.
US investigators are ramping up their probe into Malaysia's multi-billion-dollar 1MDB scandal. That's according to 3 Reuters sources who said cooperation between Malaysian and US investigators has shot up since the country's election last month. At least 6 countries are investigating accusations former Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak and his associates pocketed part of $4.5 billion allegedly stolen from state investment fund 1MDB. Najib lost last month's election in Malaysia to political arch-rival and former leader Mahathir Mohamad. Najib has consistently denied any wrongdoing in the 1MDB case. The FBI is now much more confident they can work with Malaysia, with sources saying the country's new government is open to cooperating. US authorities had seen Najib's government as actively obstructing efforts to probe the 1MDB case. While the US has considered charging Najib or his associates, they'd prefer Malaysia to be the one to lay charges against any of their own officials. Meanwhile, Malaysia's own investigation into the scandal is heating up. The country issued multiple arrest warrants on Friday, including for financier Low Tech Joe, known as Joe Low. But according to new PM Mahathir, an arrest is not so easy.
We are trying to arrest Julu, but he is not in the country.
Sources also told Reuters Malaysia is considering asking the US Department of Justice to have investment bank Goldman Sachs return nearly $600 million it earned from a series of bond sales for 1MDB. No formal request's been made yet, but if the DOJ did push Goldman to release the profits, Malaysia may be able to claim the money back. Both the DOJ and Goldman Sachs declined to comment.
It's one of the big questions looming over the Singapore summit. If Donald Trump strikes a deal with Kim Jong-un, what would an open North Korea even look like? The U.S. president promised Pyongyang would become very rich through American investment if it ditches its nuclear weapons.
But I think you're going to have a very positive result in the end.
But as Reuters' Cynthia Kim reports, it may not be America that powers a new North Korea. Experts say it would probably be China.
What I'm hearing from experts is that we're unlikely to see American companies like dozens of McDonald's or Starbucks, even if North Korea opens up and accepts foreign investment. This is because the China model would look more attractive to Kim rather than adopting American-style capitalism, because privatizing everything, adopting free market economy would mean weakening of power.
Kim Jong-un has already made 2 visits to China since March, and a separate group of North Koreans toured China's industrial hubs in May. Some experts say Kim is talking to Trump because he needs the U.S. to back off on sanctions. But after that, the headlines will all be about Kim and China's President Xi Jinping. And it may not happen fast. Like China in the 1980s, at first, foreign money might be isolated in special economic zones. North Korea already has several built up.
Many suspect there will be more of special economic zones, like the Kaesong Industrial Complex. Having these special areas will mean minimal changes for the rest of the economy. It will also mean loosening of the rules for investment will apply to those specific areas only. So North Korea already has more than 20 of those, but we're likely to see more.
But before all of this can happen, a long conversation is waiting for Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un in Singapore.
Families in Guatemala mourned the victims of the Fuego volcano on Thursday as the death toll climbed to 109. Authorities have called off search and rescue teams for now because of rain and mudslide warnings. Locals in this hard-hit community are struggling to cope after Fuego did this week, spewing deadly rivers of hot gas, rocks, and ash. many had no time to evacuate.
The stone from the volcano, they went everywhere. They caused a racket in the darkness. They didn't just cover part of the town, they blanketed the town. The eruption affected everyone.
Admitted that the volcano alert went out late, but it's less clear just whose fault it was. The country's Volcanology Institute said they sent out warnings. The National Disaster Agency didn't react in time. Guatemala's public prosecutor has opened an investigation into whether protocols were followed. There are still 190 people missing after the eruption. Authorities say they may send search and rescue teams back in if conditions improve. Meanwhile, there could be another disaster in the works. The Red Cross and Red Crescent says ash has fallen over more than half the country, covering crucial agricultural areas.
When Bayan Samara's children asked her why she couldn't buy them new toys or clothes, she took them here, onto the streets of the capital Amman, where Jordan is being rocked by the biggest protests in years. The US ally has mostly escaped the turmoil that's hit much of the region, but a build-up of economic policies and tax reforms are hitting people's pockets, and families like the Samaras are struggling to stay afloat in Jordan's sluggish economy.
I'm 36. This is the first time something like this has happened. I can't wait another 36 years. I want to build a future for my kids. I'll protest today, tomorrow, and after that until the situation changes.
Public anger has grown this year since the end of bread subsidies and a rise in the general sales tax. It's all part of an IMF plan to cut the Arab nation's $37 billion debt. Jordan's King Abdullah is urging broad talks over taxes after replacing his prime minister. It was an attempt to diffuse public frustration, but the protests have continued. Ahmed and Bayan say their problems won't go away without deeper democratic change in government.
Seven mosques in Austria will be shuttered and up to 40 imams expelled. It's part of what the country's right-wing government calls just the beginning of a push against Islamic ideology and the foreign funding of religious groups. Austria's coalition government of conservatives and the far right came to power promising to clamp down on migration and benefits for refugees. Chancellor Sebastian Kurz already oversaw a tough new law on Islam in 2015 in Ober's Minister of Integration. That banned foreign funding of religious groups and created a duty for Muslim societies to have a, quote, positive fundamental view towards Austria's state. The country counts roughly 600,000 Muslims, many of Turkish origin. One of the Vienna mosques to be shut down for operating illegally is influenced by the Grey Wolves, a Turkish nationalist youth group. A Turkish presidential spokesman tweeted that the decision was a reflection of the Islamophobic, racist and discriminatory wave in Austria.
Alyssa Slotkin is running for Congress in Michigan's 8th district. She supports gun rights and opposes single-payer health care, but she's a Democrat. What's more, she's backed by decidedly liberal donors from some of the most progressive places in the country. She's benefiting from an effort called Purple Project, based in the San Francisco Bay Area. It's a loose-knit group of donors looking to back moderate Democrats running outside of California, all in an effort to help flip the House of Representatives. Reuters correspondent Heather Somerville.
With no San Francisco Bay Area Democrat likely to face a serious challenge from a Republican in this fall's midterm elections, this group of Silicon Valley technology and marketing executives are looking farther afield, way outside of California, for middle-of-the-road Democrats that they can support.
To win the House, Democrats need to take 23 seats from Republicans. So far, the group has endorsed 6 candidates from Ohio, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and elsewhere.
Purple Project is a political organization, but it has deeply personal roots. Chris Albinson, a technology investor in San Francisco, was unnerved when he discovered that his father-in-law, who lives in Michigan, voted for Trump. Albinson set about looking for moderate candidates who might be Democrats but could talk to people like his father-in-law and really relate to Trump voters. So the first litmus test for candidates that Purple Project has endorsed, such as Alyssa Slotkin, is to meet with Chris Albinson's father-in-law and get the seal of approval.
She's projected to easily win the Democratic nomination in Michigan's August primaries, but Slotkin has an uphill battle in November when she faces a two-term Republican incumbent. If she hopes to replicate recent Democratic upsets in Pennsylvania, Alabama, and Virginia, she'll need all the help she can get.
The Chinese tech giant caught up in Donald Trump's trade fight with Beijing has been saved from the brink. ZTE was given a lifeline by the White House on Thursday after the company agreed to pay up $1 billion fine and shake up its top management and board. In return, a US sales ban on ZTE is lifted, and it can do business with American suppliers. ZTE is China's #2 device maker, selling everything from smartphones to smart home appliances. The ban came in April after ZTE was found lying about its compliance with US sanctions on Iran and North Korea. ZTE then ceased major operations almost straight away. In addition to the fine and top-level overhaul, the deal will have ZTE place $400 million in escrow. Those funds are designed to protect against any future violations by ZTE. Wall Street responded well to the deal. Shares of US companies who deal with ZTE rose after the announcement, but reaction in Congress was mixed. Some US lawmakers immediately slammed Trump over the deal. Democrat Adam Schiff, a member of the House Intelligence Committee, said on Twitter Trump had caved on the deal, asking if the president is so desperate for a deal that he's willing to put Chinese jobs ahead of US national security.
For fashion workers in the Balkans, business has never been better. And while the region has long been making clothes for affordable brands, it's luxury labels that are increasingly looking east as they struggle to keep up with demand. The high-end fashion sector is expected to grow by up to 5% this year, outpacing fashion as a whole. And countries like Bulgaria and Romania are quietly establishing a foothold in the market. Reuters correspondent Michael Kahn is following the story.
It's the Instagram age where people want something continuously new. Places like Italy and France, it's harder to find workers, they're more expensive. Places like Bulgaria and Romania have had a long tradition of sewing and manufacturing.
Top fashion houses have experimented with manufacturing abroad in the past, but often only for more basic garments. But labels like Hugo Boss and Versace are now expanding their orders so their products can hit the shelves faster. And factories like these are investing in specialized machines to take on the workload. Brands are as transparent about their suppliers.
When they're manufacturing out of Italy or France or England, they tend to not want to make it very public. When people go into a shop in Paris or London, they expect it or they think that it's made by Italian craftsmen or French craftsmen, when in fact it may be made by similarly skilled people, but in a place like Bulgaria or Romania.
Clothing exports in the Balkans are dropping from their record highs, but suppliers are hoping a wave of demand from high-end clients could help boost their output.
The Me Too movement taking strides toward eliminating one of the most notorious Hollywood institutions, the so-called casting couch. The largest U.S. actors union, SAG-AFTRA, and the 4 major television networks agreeing to limit auditions in private hotel rooms and homes. Disgraced Hollywood mogul Harvey Weinstein is alleged to have arranged these sorts of meetings with actresses and then soliciting sex or engaging in abuse.
That this defendant used his position, money, and power to lure young women into situations where he was able to violate them sexually.
More than 80 women have accused Weinstein of sexual misconduct. Weinstein denies having non-consensual sex with anyone. The demands by the Actors Union are part of a tentative 3-year contract renewal between the group and ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox. SAG-AFTRA President Gabrielle Carteris, best known for her role on the 90s TV series Beverly Hills 90210, said the contract's new language, quote, represents a partial realization of our work toward industry culture change. Weinstein is facing trial for criminal charges of rape and sexual assault. He has pled not guilty.
It's got the fans, the fouls, and the finishes. The World Cup may be about to kick off in Russia, but another World Cup has just finished in the UK capital, London. but what it doesn't have is FIFA, or indeed teams that you're likely to recognise. I'm Reuters' David Doyle, reporting to you from the CNIFA World Cup, a competition for disputed territories, ethnic minorities and countries that are simply too small or isolated to take part in major international games. Such as Abkhazia, a breakaway region of Georgia recognised only by Russia and a handful of other UN countries. And Barawi, a diaspora team from a conflict-hit town in Somalia. Billy Mehmet, striker for Northern Cyprus, which is only recognised as an independent state by Turkey, says the competition means he can represent part of his heritage.
I mean, to play for the country my dad was born, it's a proud moment for him and for me, you know. I mean, he was here today, he looked like he was going to cry at one stage, so it's brilliant, you know.
CNIFA says it represents around 320 million people across the world through its 48 members, from the Rohingya ethnic minority to the people of the UK county of Yorkshire. Many of its members are in ongoing struggles for greater recognition.
A really good example of that is Tibet, really. It's pretty obvious that a Tibetan wouldn't want to play for the Chinese national team, and yet what other option presents itself through FIFA? So our model is effectively a more flexible model of identity, and we feel it allows a lot more people to express who they are through sport in a way that is quite prohibitive when you only use sort of nationality as the guiding light.
CNIFA is a not-for-profit organisation and says it is apolitical. Teams are banned from making political statements at its games. And if you're interested in the result, the final saw Hungarian ethnic group Carpatalia beat Northern Cyprus to lift the trophy. With a celebration worthy of the final taking place in Moscow next month.
The chestnut colt Justify ran his way into the history books on Saturday, winning Thoroughbred Racing's Triple Crown with a victory at the Belmont Stakes in New York. He's now just the second horse to take the crown since 1978 and 13th overall. Jockey Mike Smith navigated Justify through a field of 9 challengers. Justify finished the 1.5-mile course in 2 minutes and 28.18 seconds. The victory is the second Triple Crown for trainer Bob Baffert. He trained the last Triple Crown winner, American Pharoah, in 2015. With the win, 3-year-old Justify is now undefeated in 6 starts.
This isn't a Japanese garden. It's actually a French hospital, the latest clinic experimenting with virtual reality headsets to help their patients through otherwise very stressful visits.
A bit like a hypnosis technique, which is another way to lower doses of anesthetics or painkillers and to offer patients more comfort, especially those with anxiety.
The concept is straightforward. It distracts you from the pain or the nervousness. And here at St. Joseph Hospital in Paris, it's being used with relatively simple treatments, like fixing a dislocated shoulder or the unpleasant procedure of having a urinary catheter inserted. VR headsets are being used at several hospitals in the United States already, including Mount Sinai in Los Angeles, but it's a new concept here in France. St. Joseph believes it will become commonplace within a decade.
The former restaurant where Anthony Bourdain rose to be executive chef became a makeshift memorial on Friday. Mourning fans flocked to New York's former Brasserie Les Halles, bringing flowers and messages of love and appreciation.
He was very honest and equal the way he treated everyone. He didn't privilege any ethnicity or peoples. It was just pure appreciation of life, living and eating well and drinking well.
Everything that he did, traveling the world, introducing us to new cultures, telling us to get out there and try things and try new foods and be nice to different people. It's so needed right now.
Bourdain died of a suicide in a hotel room near Strasbourg, France. The host of CNN's food and travel TV series Parts Unknown was there working on an upcoming episode. Brash and opinionated, Bourdain had spoken openly about his past drug use and heroin addiction. His death, the second high-profile suicide of a U.S. celebrity this week, prompting an outpouring of support across social media, with people sharing their own stories of struggling with depression and anxiety. British celebrity chef Gordon Ramsay tweeted that he was stunned and saddened by the loss and provided the number for the suicide hotlines in the U.S. and U.K. Bourdain was 61 years old.
You're up to date. Check back later as stories develop.
Early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise.
And all was Benjamin Franklin wise. So you actually think electricity can pass through metal? Ha! Ben Franklin, go fly a kite.
Excellent idea. Where are my keys?
Besides the bifocals, Ben invented the Franklin stove, the odometer, and the lightning rod. Ingenuity, pass it on. From the Foundation for a Better Life at values.com.
This is Betty White. I know you don't need one more thing to worry about, but listen, high blood pressure can cause kidney damage, blindness, heart attack, stroke, and you can have high blood pressure even if you feel all right. 1 in 7 adults has it, but it's easy to get your blood pressure checked, and you can treat it if it is too high. So don't worry about it, don't ignore it, just see your doctor and check it out.
For your free booklet, visit the Will Rogers Institute at wrinstitute.org and find us on Facebook and Twitter.
Your NBC Sports Radio update starts now.
Baseball is back. I'm Jeff Biggs, and with the NBA and NHL seasons now over, baseball back in the spotlight with daytime action about to get underway on this Sunday, starting at Fenway with the rubber game between the Red Sox and the White Sox. Also coming up, the AL Central leading Cleveland Indians. They're in Detroit. The Seattle Mariners, percentage points ahead of the Astros in the AL West. They'll take on Tampa Bay. Next hour, the longest winning streak in baseball goes to the Angels. They've won 6 in a row, and they will go for the sweep in Minnesota. And then later on, Max Scherzer will take them out in D.C. against the Giants. Scherzer has won the last 2 NL Cy Young Awards, is 10-1 with an ERA of 1.95, and last time out he threw his second immaculate inning against the Rays.
The way I look at it, I only pitch once every 5 days. I get other days off to kind of mentally relax while the rest of the team is going out there and competing every day. That's the only time I get to get out there. So I'm only going to start, 33, 34 times in the year. So you got to make the most of it. Every time you take the mound, I'm itching to get out there. I'm anxious, and it's an amazing feeling to be able to go out there and compete.
Tonight, the top team in baseball right now, the Yankees, who have won 9 of their last 10. They'll go for the Subway Series sweep at Citi Field. Well, as you saw on NBC, a good day for Rafael Nadal, who won his 11th French Open title at Roland Garros. Straight sets over Dominic Thiem. Here is Rafa postgame on NBC.
Against a player that pushes you to the limit, so it's amazing. I can't describe my feelings because even it's not even a dream win here the 11th time now, because it's impossible to think in something like this. So just can say thank you very, very much, everybody. It's just fantastic. Thanks.
I'm Jeff Biggs, NBC Sports Radio.